Right, good morning everyone. My name's James Bradshaw from JBC Projects, and Declan, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, good morning everyone. My name's Declan Sharkey. I'm a Global Director at Populous, and firstly, thank you for the invite. It's always nice to come back home.
And Declan, for those that aren't familiar with Populous, could you give us a bit of an overview of the company?
Sure, of course. So Populous are a global design firm that specializes in sports and entertainment buildings. We as a practice have delivered over 3,200 venues around the world. That's built venues. We've obviously designed many, many more. We currently have around 1,500 employees spread across 28 studios around the world. And really our practice is about delivering phenomenal fan experiences. That's what we're about. Yes, we're an architectural practice, but ultimately it's about the people, hence the name Populous. And it's an incredibly exciting time in the marketplace at the moment with hundreds of live projects right across the globe.
We had a fantastic tour around Croke Park yesterday with the team here. Have you Populous involved in anything here, or?
Good question. The answer is yes. I guess Ireland has always been really good to us. So in the late 1990s, early 2000s, we did some work here at Croke Park. Initially, we did some master planning work, and then we did some interior design work. But as I say, we've been very fortunate to deliver some amazing sports and entertainment facilities here in Ireland. So after Croke Park, we went on to deliver the Aviva Stadium here. We also worked very closely with our friends at Live Nation to deliver the 3 Arena in Dublin, which is a phenomenal venue. Mike Adamson and his team, they're doing an incredible job, and we continue to support them as the arena evolves and moves into the future. And more recently, we've been also working with Live Nation and BAM through the design of the Cork Event Centre down in the south of Ireland. So incredible opportunity, amazing country. I know I'm slightly biased, but yeah, our relationship with Ireland goes back a long way.
And can you tell us a bit more about some of the projects that you're currently involved in and a bit of detail about those?
Of course. So there's a whole range of projects. A lot of them are confidential, I'm sure you'll understand. But I think just starting, I guess, a little bit closer to home, if we start in the UK, one of the projects we're incredibly excited about right now is the Fulham Riverside stand. So that will open up in the next few months. Incredibly exciting because it really is a game changer in the industry. And I think it is the true leisure destination. We're all very quick to talk about multifunctionality and leisure. But if you take the Riverside stand, I mean, it's phenomenal what it's doing. Within that stand, you've got everything from a boutique hotel to a spa to Michelin star restaurants to various event spaces. And it also is an 8,000 capacity stand. So fan experience is very much at the heart of it, but it is truly creating a leisure destination on the banks of the River Thames. So incredibly excited about that project. And again, I'll probably touch on this a little bit later. All of these great projects rely on a strong partnership between us and our clients. And at Fulham, Mr. Khan delivered an incredible vision that allowed us to go on and deliver what will be an incredible piece of architecture. And then sticking in the UK, we're currently very active in Manchester at the moment. We are working on the Etihad Stadium North Stand expansion for Manchester City. And again, very exciting, obviously increasing the capacity by 8,000, but it goes way beyond that. There's a new fan plaza that will be enclosed, new F&B offerings, 400 key hotel, again, creating that true destination. And right next to Co-op Live, that opened up.
The second best arena in Manchester, is that?
I won't go there. But Co-op Live for us was an incredible journey. And a real game changer in the industry. And I'm sure I'll come back and touch on that in a little bit. And then going outside of the UK, we're very active in Europe at the minute. We've got offices in Madrid, Munich, Paris, Milan. So I guess starting with Italy, we have a number of projects there. One that's in the public domain is the new stadium for AS Roma, which is a 60,000 capacity stadium for the Eternal City. Again, incredible client group and the Friedkin family. And again, we talk about fan experience there. We've been given an incredible opportunity to really celebrate the Curva Sud. So we will have 23,500 fans on one stand, which will be the biggest in Europe. And really, again, when we talk about Rome, there's an incredible opportunity to bring kind of the cafe culture of Rome inside the stadium. And it really is trying to bring that kind of almost high street experience inside the stadium. So Italy, lots of incredible opportunities, some we can't talk about right now. And then we move to, let's go to Munich. So in Germany right now, we're very active. One of the projects is the new arena in Munich, next to Munich Airport. So it'll be a 20,000 capacity arena. And again, really been driven by strong sustainability aspirations. So we're working through the detailed design of that at the moment. But again, for those of you that have been fortunate enough to go to the Adele concert in Munich recently, I spent some time there. It just showcases what an incredible city it is, and the arena undoubtedly will be hugely successful there. And then let's move outside of Europe. So let's go to the Middle East for a little bit. So we're very active in Saudi Arabia at the moment. We have a whole range of projects there. And I guess one of the very exciting ones is the Prince Mohammed bin Salman Stadium, which is the 40,000 capacity stadium in Qiddiya. And again, for us, it's a real game changer. It's the first in the world to have a fully integrated sliding pitch, sliding roof, and sliding LED wall. So incredibly flexible. And again, it's a buzzword at the moment, multifunctionality, flexibility. But this is truly doing it. So when it's opened, for example, in a single day, they will be able to have football, esports, concerts, basketball, incredibly flexible. And again, the digital content will be on another level. And in many ways, it is kind of the sphere, if you like, of sport. And then probably one final example is the project we've just started on in Casablanca in Morocco, which will be the biggest football stadium in the world at 115,000. It will be a World Cup venue, like the project in Saudi I mentioned, and it also will house 2 home teams. And again, there's been a big focus in providing that kind of incredible fan experience for both of those football teams.
That's really interesting, because all of those examples that you gave are all similar in loads of respects, but all of them seem completely different in other respects. And obviously you're known for being a big architecture firm, but you're actually much more of a multidisciplinary. Can you tell us more about the other sort of services that you do and how you're able to, things like the cafe culture? How do you go from just being a master plan architect to getting to that level of granular detail?
Yeah, it's a really good point, and I guess sometimes one of the challenges we have is we get known for the Tottenhams and the Spheres, but a huge number of projects are on a much smaller scale. So we have a number of groups within Populous, and really the way we've built our practice is to have a depth of knowledge, not a breadth, but a depth of knowledge. And we're very clear, we want to be the very, very best in the world at sports and entertainment buildings. That's how we've built our practice, and that's how we will continue to grow. Some of those groups within the family include Jump Studios. So Jump Studios are an interior design group. To be honest, we don't like the phrase interior design. It's really about experience-driven design or revenue-driven design. And those guys have done some incredible projects, both by themselves and what us as an architectural group. So some of those projects include Co-op Live. So all of the interior spaces there were designed by Jump Studios, everything from the Bentley Record Room through to the gallery lounges, the sky lounges, the backstage club, the street, etc. So Liam Doyle and the team there have done an incredible job. They also work across a number of projects, as I say, in their own right. One of those was all of the premium spaces at the Camp Nou Stadium in Barcelona, and then right through to projects at the Milan Arena in Santa Giulia that they're doing right now. So key part of the business, and we never look to separate interior design and architecture. They absolutely are one thing. They must complement each other, and it goes back to delivering that kind of authentic fan experience. Another group we have is Experiential Studios, and that's an acoustic and AV group. And again, I think we're all aware of how important acoustics and audiovisual is in delivering that great fan experience. We just need to look at the likes of the Sphere or the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, where it goes from a Spurs game to Beyonce concerts, NFL. So big part of our business, and they work across the festival world as well, where they produce content for festivals right around the globe. So again, sometimes people talk about the macro, at Populous, but the micro is just as important. Another group we have is Populous Design and Build, where we actually design and build it, so it's a turnkey solution. So we would go in, do the initial design, and then build it as a group. Number of really exciting projects on the books at the moment for a number of Premier League football clubs, and also through to high-end restaurants in the centre of London. And one of the projects I can talk about is the VAR facility for the Premier League. That was something that Populous Design and designed and built. And then we go right through. We also have a group called Populous Activate. And that's a key group. That's about how do we commercialize these buildings. I know it's a phrase we don't like to use sometimes, but ultimately we do have to sweat the asset to make it work and generate sufficient revenues. And what we do with the Populous Activate group is how do we embed these sponsors and naming rights partners into the buildings? So again, using Co-op Live as an example, or the O2 Arena or Tottenham, take your choice. Right there, we were there at the very beginning producing all of the collateral and looking at what these partners might be. And if we take something like the Bentley Record Room, for example, that was always conceived as a record room. And then when we went out and started to speak to Bentley, they really joined that journey. And then essentially we started to look at their brand, and in very simple terms, we took the inside of a car and we took the materials, those rich materials, and brought them in to the Bentley Record Room in Manchester. And then the rest of the group, I'll touch on briefly, is master planning, urban design, landscape, consulting, revenue generation. So we look to provide that kind of depth of knowledge that I touched on earlier.
Wow, I knew about 3 of those. I didn't quite realise it was that deep. But that's fascinating. So over the last sort of 2 days, we've heard quite a lot about emerging trends. There's been a lot of talks about frictionless technology. We've had Capture, we've had Just Walk Out talking about it. One of the sort of the key themes in what they were talking about is, yes, retrofitting into existing venues, it can be a bit of a challenge, etc. But when we're looking at brand new venues from scratch, at what point do we start thinking about those emerging trends, such as a Just Walk Out or a Capture? Is that already in the past, or is that is that no longer emerging? That's already there. So a new build design wouldn't necessarily need to future-proof for it. But what are those sort of things that you see coming forward, and how do you integrate that into the design of a new venue?
Yeah, no, a good question. I mean, the industry's forever changing, as we know. Technology is continuing to advance. So we always have to design with the future in mind and offer a degree of flexibility. I think the frictionless technology is pretty incredible, provided it's delivered in the right way. And I guess one of the first venues we really started to integrate the frictionless technology was at the Climate Pledge Arena in Seattle, where the deal was done with Amazon as part of the Climate Pledge naming rights. And it's proven to be incredibly successful there. And I think it's ultimately about getting the right balance so that your customer can relate to it. We look at, for example, the Buffalo Bills Stadium that's on site at the moment in New York, and that's fully frictionless technology throughout the venue. So it's certainly here, but it's definitely, again, about understanding where you are. So, for example, in Manchester, it was always about what's right for Manchester. So I think as these technologies come in and change, they still have to be authentic and they still have to relate to the fan base. But I think trends in general are major drivers in what we do. I think this idea of the kind of immersive experiences is here to stay. We look, when we delivered the Sphere in Las Vegas, that was a game changer for us. Most clients that we sit down with now will talk about the Sphere, not to emulate it, but to talk about certain components of it, and just that kind of immersive world that you can go into. I was very fortunate to be there for the opening event by U2, and it really, even as designers, and we knew what was going to happen, it was pretty phenomenal to sit in there. I think with the growth of esports and other events, we're going to really start to push the boundaries around immersive design. You just got to look at what COSM are doing right now, which is pretty exciting as well. I think the other big trend, and I know we touched on that yesterday, is sustainability. You know, it used to be a bit of a checkbox, but it's not anymore. And James, you know this as well as I do, having gone through this in many of your projects. It's no longer a nice to have. If you look at the likes of a Coldplay or a Billie Eilish, they demand it, the consumers demand it. So sustainability is a huge, huge driver in what we do. And I guess the two venues that always spring to mind when we talk about sustainability is the Climate Pledge Arena in Seattle, for obvious reasons, which was the first net certified zero carbon venue anywhere in the world, and in the Co-op Live in Manchester. And I think sustainability works on multiple levels, and that's what we have all got to appreciate and understand. I mean, one level is the construction. These are big buildings. They cost hundreds of millions and billions in some cases. And we take Manchester as an example. Right from the beginning there, it was very clear that we were going to look to source as many of the materials locally as we can. And out of that kind of construction build, over £200 million was spent on locally sourced materials in the northwest of England. And then you start to look at the venue from an operational standpoint. And it has to have zero waste to landfill. It has to be powered as much as possible by PVs with 7,500 solar panels on the roof, LED lighting throughout. So I think sustainability is here to stay, and rightly so, but it needs to be fully integrated into the design process. I think the other trend, and it's a really interesting one for us, and it's certainly very relevant in the sporting world now, is the growth of women's sport. We have a dedicated group within Populous at the minute that are laser focused on that. You've just got to look at Arsenal, the women's team now play at the Emirates Stadium, which we designed many years ago, and they're getting a 60,000 capacity, which is absolutely incredible with lots of families, etc. We were very fortunate to work down in Australia for the Women's World Cup, which I know Erlen put on an amazing show for us down there. And we delivered the first bespoke women's training facility in the whole of Australia for the Matildas team. And we also worked on Stadium Australia, which we designed many years ago for the Olympics. And there was a whole upgrade project there to, again, make it appropriate for the women's team. So I think there's some of the trends that we're seeing at the moment right across all of our projects.
That's really fascinating, especially the sustainability stuff, because when we were working on AO Arena redevelopment, a big part of that was, and it wasn't really talked about that much, because it was, everyone was talking about the commercial race that Co-op and AO were having. But there was also that sustainability race that they were both having, and it's very much just a standard part of every project now, and also just sort of cold, revenue saving. It's, if you get more efficient MEP in a building, it's far more sustainable from a financial perspective as well. Yeah,
I completely agree, and I mean, back a few years ago, people would be very quick to talk about LEED and BREEAM, and whilst they're very important, I think you have to go beyond that now. As I say, it's something that is our responsibility, and even within the Populous group now, we have a sustainability department. So right from the beginning, we start to think about sustainability, and it's a fundamental part of the design process. It's not an add-on. And I mean, for us, one of the big eye-openers on a personal level for me was at the Co-op Live in Manchester. All these projects go through certain value engineering, and I remember it was a very small amount. We were doing some value engineering at Co-op Live, and Tim Lewicki at Oakview Group actually added in to the budget more money to make it even more sustainable. So that was really kind of refreshing, and what the likes of Harry Styles involved as well. Everything was thrown at it to make it as sustainable as possible.
And what sort of challenges have you been seeing in the market? I mean, Sphere's a good example. That was obviously a very challenging project that then got mothballed in London. But just more sort of generally within the projects you're getting, certain things will have a very local challenge. But are there kind of big macro global challenges to some of these projects that you're seeing across from one to another?
Yeah, I mean, I think what challenges comes opportunities, always. And I think at the moment, obviously, one of the challenges we all have in the industry is costs. Costs of materials have gone up, and it's something we're always trying to manage. And I think probably a good example of that is the work we did at Camp Nou, where we designed all of the premium spaces. And really, it goes back to having that partnership between ourselves and the client. And really what we did there was start to really tap into the kind of Catalan architecture and the history of Barcelona. And really what that allowed us to do was create a really strong design narrative that had a very minimalist kind of material palette. So I guess the benefits of that were twofold. We were able to deliver something that's very authentic for the club, but also quite restrained and allowed us to manage the budget. So I think, hence my point about what challenges comes opportunities. But the cost piece we're very, very mindful of at the moment. And as a practice, we always work in a kind of as a triangle. And by that I mean design, cost, and revenue. Those three have to be working together and they have to inform each other. We have no interest in paper architecture. You can have the best design in the world, but if it's not generating sufficient revenues or it's not affordable, then it doesn't work. So right from the very beginning, we're looking at design, cost, and revenue, and that carries on until we reach practical completion.
And with that partnership being so important with the clients, it's obviously very daunting for any client to embark on a project and sort of knowing when to start on a project as well. And we were having a few conversations over the last couple of days on this about, do you get your brief sorted and then start having a conversation with an architect and bring them in? Or do you go with more of a conceptual idea and work that brief up together, which obviously takes longer, but I've often found that operators, clients are always a little bit nervous about what is that day one, what's the first step that you do. Do you guys find it better to have that conversation day one or have that conversation a few weeks down the line once they've got their ducks in a row?
You probably know what I'm going to say here. It is really interesting, and obviously, as an organisation, we respect our clients' wishes, that's a given. But we would always say that the kind of most successful projects, we start at the very beginning and we're involved and we help create the brief. So, for example, if you look at right back to the Wembley, the Emirates, the Tottenham, the Aviva Stadium, we were in there at the very beginning creating the brief and then designing to it, because it goes back to that partnership piece. And again, when we're there from the beginning, we can immediately advise on what's possible, where the challenges might be. So we would always say start at the beginning. Again, one of the reasons why we've built our kind of practice to have that kind of depth to it, as I mentioned, is that we have the ability to go in at the beginning and offer that advice. And it is interesting when I think back to some of the projects, whether it's Tottenham with Daniel Levy or it's Co-op-Live, what Tim Lewicki and City Football Group. And in those projects, they wanted us to actively come in and say, did you think about this? So for example, obviously at Co-op-Live, Tim delivered an incredible vision, which was very simple in many ways. I want the greatest music venue in the world, the most sustainable in Europe, and the biggest capacity in the UK. And then our responsibility then was to go and how do you actually deliver that? So we were going back to that client group and saying, okay, we can deliver this nightclub on a macro scale. We can get to 23,500 into this kind of sweaty black box, as Bruce Springsteen has coined it. But that then frees up this incredible triple height space that becomes a street. It can become a fan zone in its own right. So the nice thing about that sort of working relationship, we were able to get to an optimized brief because we were testing ideas right from the very beginning. And then as we worked through that design process, within weeks, months, we had a really fixed brief, both from a design standpoint and also from a cost standpoint.
Brilliant, thank you. Well, that's a fascinating oversight, and thank you very much. Katie, how are we doing for time? Does anyone in the audience have any questions? Down at the front here? Don't have to run as far for this one, Katie.
I could have put my heels on for that one.
Hi, Declan. I just want to ask you a quick question. How early on is lighting in the discussion with the venues?
Sorry, could you say again?
How early on is lighting at the table in the discussions?
It's a really good point. At the early stage, for sure. Again, when we go back to talk about, we always talk about fan experience. So right from the beginning, lighting is considered, audio, visual, acoustics. We bring the team in right from the very beginning for a number of reasons, so that we can determine the right fan experience, but also, again, we have to determine the cost, and lighting is a big factor in that. I mean, we touched on it briefly here. All of our venues now have to be multifunctional, whether that's soccer, NFL, concerts, and as you know better than anyone, lighting is a key factor in that. So the lighting design starts at the very beginning, but it's certainly at the end of our IBA stage 2 or concept design, we would look to have established what is the concept for the lighting, and we would look to reach out to suppliers and understand what it is. And again, it gives that robustness to the cost plan also.
Thank you, gentlemen. That was fabulous.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, let's
Thanks a lot.
round of applause for that one. Thank you. Okay.